911, where's your emergency?
Yes, Ethan. My wife, my family are on the ground, still on the ground bleeding.
Gurpreet Singh was calling in to report the discovery of 4 family members.
Westchester Police, anybody in? There's a third one there. Looks like got a gunshot wound to the top of the head.
It was probably the most gruesome scene I've been a part of.
It is a horrific execution-style murder of these 4 people.
One of the neighbors in the apartment complex told the police he had heard a splash, so they brought a dive team in.
This particular firearm holds 17 rounds, and our victims in this case have been shot 16 times.
We don't have a suspect at this time. We have several people that we're going to follow up with.
There's always going to be that thought that maybe these people were killed because of their race or religion or country of origin.
We want justice. We only want a killer that should be hanged.
Lower County 9, what's the address of your emergency room? Okay, your wife is in a bar, you said she's under Sanjay?
This is what he's going to tell you. I'm trying to get out of that situation.
And I grabbed the gun.
Trying to find the first place to put a body.
No, sir.
The only thing they could do was kill him.
You want to say anything?
We, the jury, need to find the defendant.
Westchester is a large suburban community just north of Cincinnati, Ohio.
We have a sizable Sikh community here in Westchester. We have a Sikh temple, and I think that draws a lot of individuals to the area who are in the Sikh community.
The best thing about America is that they accept every culture, every race. That's the best thing about America.
For years, this apartment complex was home for a Sikh family that emigrated here from India. Gurpreet Singh and his wife and their 3 school-aged children.
They moved here for work and to raise a family in this area and had other family members that were living in the area.
Gurpreet became a truck driver and participated in kind of the American dream. And then...
911, where's your emergency? Hello, 911.
Yes, Ethan.
Where are you at? I will send help, but I need to know what's going on. Can you say it again?
My wife, my family are bleeding.
Your wife and your family are doing what?
They're on the ground, still on the ground bleeding.
Sir, how many people are down?
4.
Gurpreet Singh was calling in to report the discovery of 4 family members. He was unable to provide any details about what injuries they suffered.
You say they're bleeding?
Yes, they are.
Okay, have they been shot? Have they been stabbed?
I don't know. I don't believe it.
He just wasn't giving the 911 operators a lot of information. He just kept saying they were all down, they were all bleeding.
Can you go check to see if they're breathing?
No. I can't.
You say you killed them?
No, what are you talking about?
Sir, did you do something to them?
No, I just got home.
2 squads and 2 engines. Dispatch. Sounded like the male said he had hurt the family members, but when we asked again, he said he did not.
Okay, all right, go out and meet my officer. They're out front. Honey, go meet my officer out front, please, okay?
4562, right? 4582 7262. Straight ahead. Oh, let me see your hands. Let me see your hands. Hands! Down on the ground. Stay on your belly. I'm gonna step around him. Yeah. I got cover. What happened?
I don't know. Everybody's bleeding.
They tell him to get down on the ground because obviously at that point in time, the officers don't know who he is, if he's the caller in, if he's a victim, if he's a witness, if he's the suspect.
Is there anybody else in there except for your family?
No. My wife is everybody bleeding.
You got coverage on him? Come up here and get leave coverage on him.
He's wearing a red T-shirt, a pair of blue jeans, He does not have on shoes, and his hands, his arms, his chest, and his bare socks are covered in saturated blood.
Why are you covering so much blood?
I have my wife on my lap. She tried to feed the water. No water.
Okay, stay there.
I'm not going anywhere. Please help them.
Hey, I need more coverage up here.
3-20 got smoke coming from inside. We're going to make an entry.
Westchester Police, anybody in?
They obviously have their weapons out, and they begin to methodically go through the house to see if there are suspects or the people responsible in the residence.
Be on the lookout. There's a third one there. Third one here. Looks like got a gunshot wound to the top of the head.
And they unfortunately continue to identify victims as they flow through the apartment.
Watch my back here. I'm down the hallway. You got here.
TV was on. There was some smoke coming from the stove. The fire alarm was definitely going off. It was a chaotic scene for the responding officers.
You got stuff on the stove. That's the stove. Okay. Another person in the bed here. A lot of blood. Okay.
It was one of the most gruesome scenes, probably the most gruesome scene I've been a part of. Obviously, there were 4 deceased people inside with multiple gunshot wounds, bloody footprints throughout the apartment.
We have 4 victims with no signs of life.
This was a mass murder. This was a mass shooting. It was a home invasion of some kind in the sense that 4 people, innocent people, people who were not involved in drugs or other kinds of crime, were shot and killed in their own home, one of them in their own bed.
The victims were Singh's wife, Shalinderjit, his mother-in-law and father-in-law, and his wife's aunt.
Between the 4 of them, they were shot 16 times, and 15 of those shots were to the head. It is a horrific execution-style murder scene of these 4 people.
Officers called for backup to search the area for suspects.
See if we got a canine nearby. If not, call Officer Roth in. We're going to need to try to attempt a track. Have every officer that's available come down here.
To me, it was either somebody that knew the victims did it, or it was a complete random attack, which Westchester, that doesn't happen in our community.
Let's bring a car up and get him in there, and if we can, we'll get him out of cuffs. I mean, do you have any idea what happened here?
I walk inside. My wife and my mom and my eyes are all on the ground, bleeding.
Do you know who may have done this?
Buddy, I just got here. I don't know anything. I'm going to try to get info from you, okay?
When I got to him, he was sitting in the back of one of our police cars. I viewed him as a witness.
What name do your friends call you? Mr. Singh? You want to call me Mr. Singh?
They call me Gary.
Gary?
I didn't know if it was shock from, because the story I got was he had just gotten home, and that's the condition he found his family. So I couldn't tell if it was shock from the scene or if he just was not answering things.
Can I see my wife?
Not right now, sir.
It's okay. Okay, please tell me if she's okay.
Is your wife one of the people that's in here?
My wife, deceased. My mom, dad.
Everybody inside's deceased.
What is that?
Dead. Okay. That's why it's very, very important for you to hold together and help me out so we can figure out what happened tonight, okay, Gary? I need you to be strong for me, Gary. Okay?
My aunt, okay.
Was your aunt in there?
I see her. She bleed.
Yeah, she passed. She's deceased.
She what?
Deceased, dead. Gary, just hang tight, okay? We're going to take a break for a minute. We're going to get you back to our police department where it's more comfortable and get some info there, okay?
My kids.
Where are your kids at?
My kids with my brother and my sister.
For detectives, the only good news that night was that Singh's 3 children were not at home when the murders took place. But they would soon come to wonder whether that was a fortunate circumstance or something that had been carefully planned.
My kids okay?
You able to walk okay?
Yeah, I'm okay.
Okay. Right through this door. Go in here, have a seat.
Can you please, can I talk to my brother? Have a seat.
When I first met him, I just knew that I was talking to a man who had been through, obviously, some trauma, and that was covered in blood.
Hello, how are you?
Sir, I am okay.
Okay.
Nothing wrong with me.
I understand.
I'm totally okay. You please help my family.
Yeah, we're helping. I know you've been through a lot, man. We're gonna take our time, okay?
He is the only one who could tell me what he observed before he called 911.
It's very important to us to help us out.
I come back. I see my mom. Yes, I see my mom. And I see my wife. And I see my aunt. I see they bleed and they're on the ground. And I am just running, trying to shake them, trying to see. And I go inside my dad, I shake them, he bleeds. And no one talks. And then I call and I try to give them water. They don't drink. I call 911. But sir, can you please tell me what happened and why all this?
I don't know what happened. That's what we're trying to find out from you. What you saw, what you did today, where people were.
He could remember certain things. He just didn't articulate them very well.
I understand. You've been through a lot, man. I get it. I'm just trying to help me here.
I don't remember, sir.
Okay.
Please find out what happened.
Yeah, I'll tell you what happened.
What happened?
Okay. Somebody killed your family.
Yes, but why?
I don't know. That's why I need your help.
He was in the apartment. He knows what happened. Very strange.
Who would want to kill your family?
I don't think anybody. I don't know why.
I know, but somebody did. So me and you, we need to figure out who it could have been.
So you're saying someone killed my family?
I think so. Why?
Somebody in that apartment had some problems with someone. This is not random. There's all kinds of questions. Why did this happen? Because it did happen.
Does anybody, including yourself, have a drug problem?
No, sir. Not at all.
Pills, marijuana, cocaine, methamphetamine.
Sir, I am 37 years old. I have never touched alcohol, tobacco. The hardest drink I drink is tea, coffee.
Did you guys owe anybody money?
No.
Has your wife ever been unfaithful to you?
Always faithful, no problem.
Okay. Have you ever been unfaithful to your wife?
Always faithful, never problem.
Has your mom and your dad always been faithful?
Never problem. Sir, sorry to interrupt you. It doesn't happen in Punjabi culture.
Okay.
Yes, but if it does, then it won't be cheating. It will be complete separation. It won't be like wife or husband are cheating but still living together. No. If they're together, otherwise they're left.
He gave me absolutely no motive whatsoever. Life is great, marriage is great, no drinking problems, no money problems for anyone. He wanted us to believe that everything was perfect in that house.
So if we find the person who did it, you would expect the worst punishment for him?
Yes. Because I know me and my family did nothing wrong to anybody. I've been a religion person for all my life. And look what happened. Where's God? When it's time for me, what did I do wrong?
Can I get you some more water or anything right now?
I don't feel anything. That is well. I die too.
At the end of the interview, the police asked him to submit to a gunshot residue kit to test his hands for gunshot residue before they let him go home for the evening.
So what I'm going to do, okay, is this is called a gunshot residue kit, okay?
And at that point, his demeanor completely changed. He started hyperventilating.
You all right? Oh, I want to go home. I want to go home. I want to be on kids. Maybe they're in danger. I want to go home right now.
Okay, please. Have a seat for me, okay?
No.
He did not consent to the gunshot residue. He started freaking out and panicking and wanted to leave.
What did I do wrong?
Well, I'm not saying you did anything wrong.
That's why I'm saying.
But you're the first guy to show up where 4 people have been murdered.
Look, I'm covered in blood.
I understand.
You think this is so easy for me?
No, I think
this is my family's blood.
I think it's horrible.
But you're not doing anything about it. You're treating me like I'm a criminal.
We have an entire police department.
You haven't let me see my brother.
That was a man who wanted to leave the situation he was in. It's called fight or flight for a reason. You either fight or you want to leave. And he wanted to leave. He wanted to leave badly.
Am I under arrest?
You're being detained.
What does that mean?
That means you can't leave until we get a search warrant.
Why not? What's my fault?
There's potential evidence on your hand.
Where?
I don't know.
I have been sitting here all day, get your potential.
Sit down.
No.
Here, you're not leaving.
Please, don't touch me. What did I do wrong?
Have a seat.
Why would I stay here?
I understand that, but there's no arguing about it. You're going to stay here, and that's final. That's it.
Okay, arrest me.
As soon as we get
arrest me.
You're under detain. You're
No, I don't understand detain or whatever.
Back in the room.
You arrest me?
You need to get back in this room.
Look, he told me now that my family was shot. I thought it was an accident.
That was an accident. 4 people died, and you thought it was
an
accident?
Ultimately, the police department obtained a search warrant so that they could obtain his clothing and the gunshot residue off his hands.
You bring your search warrant, you bring FBI, you bring your army on me, I'm not giving you anything. I'm not. This is my right, and I am using it.
Obviously, his behavior is very suspicious, but it by itself is not an indication of guilt.
The results of the gunshot residue test would take time, so police did not have enough evidence to charge Singh, and no choice but to let him leave.
He was out of custody for a couple of months while the police continued to conduct their investigation and wait for the lab results to come back.
There's still a mystery surrounding the murders of 4 people in a Westchester apartment.
It was a big deal in the Cincinnati area, a big deal nationally, and it was a big deal in India.
Relatives of the victims in India wanted to know what was taking so long for police in Ohio to make an arrest.
We want justice. We are in shock for the last 2 months. He just killed our family. We only want a killer that should be hanged. That's it. Thank you.
We don't have a suspect at this time. We have several people that we're going to follow up with and determine where their locations were and everything. But to say that we're looking at one person, no.
After being released by police, Gurpreet Singh helped to lead a march in Westchester amid concerns that the murders may have been a hate crime.
There's always going to be that thought that maybe these people were killed because of their race or religion or country of origin.
Friends and family are coming in from all over the country.
Everybody got one question: why?
But even as Singh proclaimed his innocence to his family, detectives remained focused on him.
The family members, like just about anyone, didn't want to believe that someone that they have known would carry out such a horrific act of violence.
Detectives came to learn from family members that Singh and his wife had an arranged marriage.
In our culture, most of the marriages are arranged marriages. They decided to marry Gurpreet with Shailendraji.
And family members also told police that 2 weeks before the murders, there was a bitter dispute between Gurpreet and his father-in-law involving the sale of some land back in India.
There was a meeting at Gurpreet's house, and Gurpreet was demanding money. So he was demanding money from the land deal that was happening in India.
Singh had told police in his interview that there were no money problems in the family.
Did you guys owe anybody money?
No.
And he also told detectives he was faithful to his wife.
Always faithful, never problem.
He was adamant. He very callously and very coldly dismissed any idea that there was any problem in his relationship with his wife.
But pictures on Singh's phone told detectives another story.
They learned that he had a long-standing extramarital affair with a woman who resided in Indianapolis. He was paying for his girlfriend's car, house, insurance, his own apartment, his truck, and he had purchased a house about 10 doors down from his girlfriend as well. They learned that this same woman reached out to him probably about half a dozen times the night of the murder.
And detectives pushed harder to find out why the children had been out for dinner with Gurpreet's cousin on that night.
This was a school night. After 9 p.m., these kids are still not in the house. We came to learn from those cousins that it was Gurpreet Singh who had the idea for the kids to leave the house and to go out to eat and to spend time with their cousin.
And then the results came back from the gunshot residue test on Singh.
Both of the defendant's hands tested positive for gunshot residue. The gun itself took some time to find. It was found in a retention pond behind the apartment.
One of the neighbors in the apartment complex told the police that he had heard a splash, and so they brought a dive team in and searched the bottom of the lake.
This particular firearm holds 17 rounds, and our victims in this case have been shot 16 times. The firearm had the serial number removed from it, which prevents law enforcement from tracking where it was purchased and who the last known purchaser of that firearm was.
The DNA of Singh's father-in-law was found on the gun, but there were no fingerprints.
They did attempt to have Mr. Singh come back in for another interview. He refused to come back in.
The final piece of the puzzle for detectives and prosecutors came from Singh's cell phone data around the time of the 911 call.
We knew that that call was placed at 9:40. The car was parked in the parking spot outside of his apartment at 9:09 p.m. The Google records for where the phone was located placed the phone inside the apartment at 9:11 p.m. and the 911 call came in at 9:40 p.m., which told me that he was home at the time of the murder. It was inescapable that Mr. Singh's statement about coming home and just finding his family murdered was so thoroughly unsupported, disproven by the electronic evidence, we decided that we needed to move forward with charges on him.
An arrest warrant was forwarded to police in Connecticut, where Singh was visiting relatives.
He was also charged with a death penalty specification for the purposeful killing of 2 or more people.
The family members of all of the victims in this case were present. Some of them came from overseas and came here and waited 5 years to see this.
There is nothing more important in our lives to get justice.
Because Gurpreet Singh could face the death penalty and it would be a jury decision, jury selection had taken on an added significance.
We wanted smart folks, and Gurpreet, being of brown skin, we wanted folks of color on the jury because I think that they can relate more to Gurpreet than white folks. And there was one juror who was an African American.
Mr. Marshall. This defendant, Gurpreet Singh, made a choice. He made a decision. A decision that has brought all of us here to this courtroom. He executed a plan to kill his entire family. In the years, months, weeks, and days leading up to these murders, despite this defendant telling the police that his marriage was great, that there were no problems, no infidelity, no issue. This defendant had been carrying on an affair with a woman in Indianapolis for some time.
Prosecutor John Marshall's strongest point was the GPS data showing Singh had arrived home at 9:11 p.m.
The gunshots were between 9:15 and 9:35. He did not call 911 until 9:40 p.m. After you've heard all of the evidence, you will announce to this defendant that he has been held accountable for it. You do that by finding him guilty. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Marshall. Mr. Rivers. Thank you.
Before I tell you what I believe happened on April 28th of 2019, I want to give everyone a little bit of background about some of the characters and information that you're going to hear over the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Singh's lawyer began to lay out for the first time a theory that the murders were carried out by a group of known criminals, part of what he called a land mafia in India.
3 men enter the door, they look around, one has a baseball bat in his hand. Gurpreet gets up and runs out the door. And he runs this way. A man chases Gurpreet with a mask on.
I believe what Gurpreet told me, which is that he was there before the shooting started and somebody broke down the door to the apartment, killed the 4 individuals as Gurpreet ran.
The person was wearing a black hooded sweatshirt, hooded.
Not a single witness in that entire apartment complex described seeing anyone matching any kind of description like that, let alone seeing Gurpreet Singh run from that apartment.
I believe after you hear all the evidence, you use your common sense, and you listen and follow the law the judge gives you, that you find Gurpreet not guilty of all counts.
You know, I've been trying adult felony cases in the state of Ohio since about 2006. I thought I had heard it all, but in that moment, I was just caught off guard by what I heard.
Knowing they had to deal with the surprise defense theory, prosecutors called the son of one of the men the defense had said was responsible for the murders.
Is your father part of the Indian land mafia?
No, he's not.
They created a boogeyman. They found a scapegoat, someone who lived halfway around the world, where every single piece of evidence conclusively demonstrated that he had not entered the United States in quite some time.
Were you in any way involved? I'm embarrassed to ask you. Were you in any way involved in the murders of Deepak, Parmjeet, Dalinderjeet, and Amarjeet?
No, sir.
To your knowledge, was your father involved?
No, sir.
Did your father call you on the phone and instruct you to do this?
No, sir.
Your Honor, I have no additional questions.
For the record, Gurpreet has never said that he killed his man. You know that? Yes, sir. Gurpreet would never kill his man, correct? No, sir. He would never kill him. No, sir. Further question.
A man on trial for killing his ex-wife and in-laws in 2019 watches his former mistress take the stand.
Kiran called.
She wishes not to be photographed or videotaped.
Gurpreet Singh's former mistress took the stand, speaking through an interpreter and requesting not to have her face shown on the national TV broadcast of the trial.
He told us that the defendant gave you $20,000 towards the mortgage down payment so that you could get the house in your name. Is that correct?
Yes.
Would Gurpreet then ever give you money for these payments?
Yes.
The prosecution tried to make it appear as if Gurpreet's finances were hurting, so therefore he had to do something, but that something could have also been a divorce.
Did the two of you ever discuss getting married?
I said to him that no, you have a family, you have kids.
Given his claims of innocence, relatives of the victims expected that Singh would testify.
For Gurpreet, we're in Butler County, Ohio, and he's of Indian descent, brown skin color, using an interpreter, and so we decided not to put him on the stand.
That's for us?
Yes, Your Honor.
Ladies and gentlemen, the next phase of the trial are the final arguments or closing arguments in counsel. Mr. Marshall, Mr. Munich, are you ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor. Money. Sex. Murder. This case has it all. This defendant, on Sunday, April 28, 2019, murdered his entire family in their house. He arranged to have his kids away from the house with his cousin. And he worked his way that evening from family member to family member, executed. Then, after shooting them once, he returns and shoots them again to make sure they're dead. There is no evidence before us to even establish the existence of an Indian land mafia or murder for hire. The reason why there's not any evidence before us is because that story is patently ridiculous. It's ridiculous. All the evidence in this case leads to one person, and one person only. That's this defendant. And ladies and gentlemen, that's why he is guilty. Beyond any doubt. Mr. Ritters. They are resting their case on the fact that Gurpreet was not completely openly honest by openly speaking and telling the police in every detail what happened. We're in the United States of America. We're in the United States of America. You don't have to talk to the police. Lying to the police is not a crime. And it's not a reason to convict someone of murder. If you have reason to doubt their theory, their hypothetical, the verdict is not guilty on all counts. Now is the time for me to pass the burden that our team has had on our shoulders for the past 3 years. And it is an immense burden when you have someone like you. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
This was a capital case, meaning they were trying to kill Gurpreet, and as a result, the jury was sequestered.
And on the second day of jury deliberation, there was a problem.
The court received 2 notes from the jury.
They reported that the vote was 11-1 in favor of guilt, but they were not hopeful that further deliberations would prove fruitful.
One of the jurors, who happened to be the only black juror, was standing her ground and saying that she believed that the government did not prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. And at least one of the other jurors was trying to bully her into voting to convict so that they didn't have to sleep at a hotel for a second night.
We are requesting that this court excuse jurors 111 and 83 from this pool and allow 2 alternate jurors to sit in their stead.
Juror 83 was the holdout for not guilty.
Removing juror number 83 is contrary to Ohio law and a violation of Dupree's due process rights. There's a mechanism for this, and that's called mistrial.
The court accepts the jury's conclusion and finds that there is no probability of this jury agreeing. This will conclude your jury service. With that, signature.
The judge had no choice but to declare what is commonly referred to as a hung jury and had to declare a mistrial.
Gurpreet was relieved that there was a hung jury. It's an emotional roller coaster when you're accused of a crime, and the ups and downs are only worse when the government's trying to kill you.
But the prosecutors almost immediately announced they would retry the case.
There was no choice in the matter.
Mr. Singh, you did sign a waiver of your right to a jury trial. Is it still your intention to go forward today, waiving that jury and having your case tried to this 3-judge panel?
Yes, sir.
Second time around, Mr. Singh elected to go for a 3-judge panel or a bench trial.
The hope is that when the jurists are judges and they're professional, that they take more of the emotion out of it.
Good morning, and may it please the court. They were alive until this defendant got home. All roads, Your Honors, will lead to this defendant. You will hear uncontroverted evidence that this defendant is the only person who had a reason to carry out these offenses: his affair and his repeated, continued demands for money. At the end of this case, Your Honors, we'll be asking you to hold this defendant accountable for these 4 murders and to find him guilty because he is guilty. Thank you. From the state of Ohio's perspective, it was almost identical in terms of the way in which the case was presented.
For his defense, Singh had a new set of lawyers who now claimed Singh hadn't run away, but actually witnessed the murders.
Gurpreet is here quite simply because he lied. There's no way around that. He lied to the police. He lied to the police when he told them that he found his family, when in reality he was there and witnessed the brutality and the violence that Mr. Marshall described. I know what we are asking on a case of this magnitude, but please, I urge you to listen to what is presented and come to the conclusion that that man did not shoot anyone and he is not guilty of these offenses. Thank you, sir.
There was zero evidence. Zero evidence. Not a single witness, not a single piece of documentary evidence, not a single piece of physical evidence that suggested that anyone other than Gurpreet Singh carried out these murders, and that let alone some arch criminal halfway around the world had carried these murders out.
All right. We will retire now and begin our deliberations. Thank you very much, counsel.
All rise. Court is adjourned.
When judge started deliberating, we were praying.
The 3 judges deliberated for 2 hours. The chief judge was the same judge who had presided over the first trial.
We have reached a verdict.
That was really emotional.
State of Ohio versus Gurpreet Singh. We, the 3-judge panel, unanimously find the defendant, Gurpreet Singh, guilty beyond a reasonable doubt of aggravated murder.
He didn't sob, cry, make any sounds, yell. It was just completely stoic and motionless.
Death is different. The statute mandates that Gurpreet will be severely punished for this crime. That is a fact. That is the law. We are here because the state is seeking to impose the ultimate sanction. The evidence will show that Gurpreet's history, character, and background is deserving of significant weight. He was caring and empathetic. Most importantly, He is a low risk for future violence.
The defense called Gurpreet's spiritual guru, who talked through an interpreter.
During your interactions with Gurpreet, did you feel as though he was committed to the tenets of the Sikh culture?
One of the tenets of the Sikh religion about drinking and living in a country like America, he was still a teetotaler. He did not drink alcohol.
Not only drinking, but even any other intoxicant drug. Nothing he never used.
Mr. Munich, Mr. Marshall, any questions for the witness?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. Would infidelity or cheating on your wife be consistent with the Sikh culture or tenets?
It's very important to be faithful to your wife and to your family, as per the tenets of the Sikh faith. This is a lifelong relationship between husband and wife, and both have to be faithful to one another.
A relationship that only terminates upon death.
Yes. For sure, that's the way it is, yes.
Mr. Poinsworth, do you have additional witnesses?
No, Your Honor. We would
So the defense is not going to call Mr. Singh as a witness?
correct, Your Honor.
Mr. Singh, your counsel has indicated that you will not be taking the witness stand in this case for purposes of your sentencing hearing. Is that correct? Yes. And is it your desire to not take the witness stand and give an unsworn statement? Yes, sir.
This time, the judges deliberated over the course of 2 full days.
The court did deliberate, and the court has reached verdicts in regard to this matter. The State of Ohio versus Gurpreet Singh. We, the 3-judge panel, do hereby unanimously find that the sentence of death should be imposed upon Gurpreet Singh under count 1 of the indictment. And that verdict form is signed by all 3 judges.
We couldn't stop our emotions. It was all tears. Everybody was crying. It was a real satisfaction. He has done a really heinous crime. So he has no right to live one day. He has no right to live even 1 second. That's what we thought. That's what we worked for. He's not a good guy. He's a devil.